In this video, I will teach you how to make your character pick up and hold different weapons in Unreal Engine 5. This is the first part of a full weapon system tutorial series that I will be starting on my channel. This playlist will cover how to animate your character, set up multiple different types of weapon, create gun mechanics such as shooting, reloading and aiming, as well as many other third or first person shooter mechanics. So let's get straight into this first tutorial. To start, we're going to create a new Unreal Engine project. So in the Epic Games Launcher, click Unreal Engine, then click the Launch button. Once this is loaded, go over to Games and select the third person template. This will give us some basic character mechanics that we can build our weapon system on top of. Next, you can use this button to select where you want to save your project, and you can also title your project something here. Once you're ready, click Create, then wait for the project to load. Before we start, we need to quickly download some gun meshes to use for our weapon system. I'm going to be using this free FPS weapons bundle from the FAB marketplace. If you want to use it as well, I've left a link in the video description. Or of course you can use any other weapon assets that you have. To use it, you can just click Add to Library, then View in Launcher. In the launcher, under Library, you can search for the FPS weapons bundle, then click Add to Project. The weapons bundle is made for Unreal Engine 4, however it can still be used for Unreal Engine 5 if you click Show All Projects, then scroll down to your project and select it, then go to the Select Version drop down and select the most recent version. Next you can just click Add to Project. Now if we open up Unreal and go to the content browser, you can see that our weapons bundle has been added to the project. Then if you go to Meshes, then open up one of the weapons folders, you can see some of the skeletal meshes that we can use for our weapon system. Next we're going to start making some weapon blueprints. We're going to have two different types of weapon blueprint, one being the weapons held by the player, and the other being the weapons that can be picked up off the ground. So open up the content browser and find somewhere that you would like to store these blueprints. I'm going to create two folders for each type of blueprint. So right click, then select New Folder. Call this Weapons. Next, right-click and create another folder, this time calling it Weapons Pickup. We'll start by creating the weapons that will be held by the player. So open the Weapons folder, then right-click, go to Blueprint Class and select Actor. Name this BP_base weapon. This blueprint will eventually contain all the basic functionality of our weapons. We'll then be able to create children from it for all our different weapon types, which will have the mechanics for things like shooting and reloading passed down to them. For now we're just going to set up the gun mesh in this blueprint. So open it, then go to the viewport and click the Add button. Search for a skeletal mesh. I'm just going to name this Gun. Next, in the Details panel, go to the Skeletal Mesh Asset drop-down and select the gun mesh that you want to use. As this is the base weapon blueprint, it doesn't really matter which gun mesh you use at this point. This is because we'll create children of this blueprint for the guns that are actually being held by the player, in which we can change which mesh is being used. Next, we need to make sure that this mesh has collisions disabled, so that it does not interfere with our character. So in the Details panel, scroll down to the Collision section, then under the Collision Presets drop down, make sure this is set to No Collision. Now we can compile and save, then go back to the content browser, where we're going to right-click on the base weapon blueprint, then go to Create Child Blueprint Class. I'm going to name this first one BP_base semi-auto weapon. Next we can just right-click and duplicate this, which is the same as creating another child of the base weapon. I'm going to name this one BP_base full auto weapon. For the semi-auto, if I open it, I'm just going to use the same gun mesh that I used for the base weapon blueprint. So I can just leave this one and compile and save it. For the full auto, I want to use a different mesh, so if I go to the content browser, then open it, then go over to the viewport and select the gun mesh, I can change the skeletal mesh asset to a different gun. For now we can just compile and save this, then move on to making some pickups that our player can interact with to pick up these weapons. So go to the content browser and open the Weapon Pickups folder. Next right click, then go to Blueprint Class and select Actor. Name this BP_base weapon pickup. We're going to use the same parent-child system for these blueprints. Open the Pickup blueprint, then go to the viewport and then press the Add button. then search for a skeletal mesh. Again, we're going to name this gun, then go over to the details panel and select a skeletal mesh asset. Next, we want to add some physics to this pickup so that it is affected by gravity. This is so that we can make the player drop this gun when they change weapons. To do this, with the gun mesh selected, go over to the details panel and search for physics. Then enable simulate physics. Next, we need to change the mesh's collision, so scroll down to the collision section, then change the collision preset to physics actor. Next, we need to create a variable that stores the weapon that can be held by the player, which corresponds to each pickup. So click the add variable button, then name this weapon. Set the type to our BP base weapon. And make sure this is set to class reference so that we can use it to spawn the weapon in the player's hands. Next, we're going to create some children of this pickup. So go to the content browser, right click on the blueprint, then go to create child blueprint class. Name this something like BP_ semi-auto weapon pickup. Again, we can duplicate this to create another child of the base weapon pickup, which I'm going to call BP_ full auto weapon pickup. If we open the full auto, we can quickly change the gun mesh like we did before. Next, we need to go to class defaults. Then we can set the weapon variable to our full auto weapon blueprint. Now just compile and save, then go back to the content browser and open the semi-auto pickup. Like before, we can just leave the mesh like it is, then we'll go to class defaults and set the weapon variable to the semi-auto weapon blueprint. Now you can just compile and save, then go back to the viewport. For the pickups, you can go into the content browser and drag them both into the level. We now want to make it so that our player character can interact with these pickups. To do this, we first need to make an interact input. So go to the content browser and locate your input actions folder. Next, right click, then go to input, then select input action. Name this IA_interact. If you open it, the value type of this input action should be digital bool. Now you can just save and close this. Next, open the content browser again and locate your input mapping context. Open it, then expand this and click the Add button. Go to the drop down and select our Interact input action. Expand this, then click the keyboard button, then press the key on your keyboard that you would like to use for this input. I'm just going to use E. Now you can just save and close this. Next, we're going to set up the interact functionality in the player character. So open the content browser and locate your character blueprint, then open it. In some space, right click and add the interact input action. Expand this, then drag off the started pin and search for a multi-sphere trace for objects. This will create a sphere which will check to see if any of the pickups are near to the player. We want it to spawn at the location of the player, so right click and search for get actor location. Connect this to both the start and end pins. Set the radius to something around 150. Next, drag off the object types and search for a make array. Because our pickups are physics actors, we want to go to the drop down and select physics body. This means that our interaction will only be able to detect physics objects. For testing, set the draw debug type to for duration. Now compile and save, then go back to the viewport and press play. If you press your interact input while not standing next to the pickups, you can see that a red sphere is created around the player. If you walk over to a pickup and press it, you can see that the sphere now turns green. This means that our interaction is successfully detecting our pickups. To make it so that we can actually interact with the pickup to equip the weapon, we first need to create a blueprint interface. Blueprint interfaces are used to communicate between multiple different actors. So we will be creating one which will tell the pickup that the player has interacted with it. First, I'm going to go to the content browser, then right click and create a new folder. I'm going to call this one Interfaces. Next, open it, then right click, then go to Blueprint, then select Blueprint Interface. Name this BPI_interaction. Then open it. Name the function interact. Then click this button to add a new input. Name it player character. Then set the type to your third-person character. Make sure that this is an object reference. This is all we need to do for this, so you can just compile and save, then go back to the player character. Here we're going to continue setting up the interaction functionality. So drag off this return value and search for a branch. Next, drag off the out hits and search for a for each loop with break. Connect this to the true pin. This will cycle through all the objects that our sphere trace hits. Next, you want to drag off the array element pin and search for a break hit result. Expand it, then drag off the hit actor and search for does implement interface. Go to the drop-down and select our interaction blueprint interface. Next, drag off the return value and search for a branch. Connect this to the for each loop. This system will check to see if the objects hit by the sphere trace have our interaction blueprint interface, which will apply to our pickups in a minute. Next, we want to drag off the hit actor again and search for our interact function from our blueprint interface. Connect this to the true pin. Then finally, we want to drag off the player character pin and search for a get reference to self. This is so that a reference to our player character is passed through to our pickup blueprints. Now just compile and save, then go to the contents drawer and open the base pickup blueprint. Here we're going to implement our interact blueprint interface into our pickups. So you can start by deleting these events. Next, click class settings, then go over to the details panel. Next to implemented interfaces, go to the drop down and search for our interact blueprint interface. Next, we can add our interact event to the graph by right clicking on it, then clicking implement event. This event is triggered from the player character when a sphere trace overlaps a pickup actor. When this event occurs, we want to communicate back to the player character to trigger an event which will spawn the weapon in the player's hands. So quickly go back to the player character blueprint, then in some space right click and add a custom event. Name this spawn weapon. Next, we need to add an input so that we can pass the weapon class from the pickup to the player character so that we can spawn it. So with the event selected, click the Add Input button, then name it Weapon. Set the type to our base weapon blueprint, and make sure this is set to class reference. Now compile and save, then go back to the base weapon pickup. Here we can drag off the player character pin and search for our spawn weapon event that we just made. Next, drag in the weapon variable and get it, then connect it to the weapon pin. Also, when we interact with the pickup, we want it to disappear, so drag off here and search for a destroy actor. We're going to quickly test that this interaction system is working. So compile and save, then go back to the player character, then drag off the event and search for a print string. Now just connect the weapon pin to the in string. Compile and save this, then go back to the viewport and press play. As you can see, if you interact with the pickup, you can see that their corresponding weapon's name is printed in the top left and they are also destroyed, meaning that our interaction system is working. Next, we need to add an animation to our project where the character is holding a weapon. For this tutorial, I'm just going to use a placeholder idle animation so that I can show how to attach guns to the player's hands. Then in the next video, I'll go through how to make a full weapon animation system for the character. All the animations that I'll be using are from Mixamo, which I've linked in the description. To make things easier, I'm going to select one of the characters. If you want to use a character that's not from Mixamo, I have a video on retargeting animations that I will link on the screen now and in the description below. For the animation, I'm just going to use this rifle aiming idle one. To get this character and animation into your project, click download, then make sure that this is set to with skin, then click download again. Once this is done, click download again, then go to this drop down and select without skin. Then just click download. Next, go back to your project and find somewhere in the content browser that you would like to import this character and animation. I'm just going to create a new folder to store them in. Next, click Import, then double click on the animation that has the character mesh. Then you can just click Import All. As you can see, the character meshes and materials have been imported, however the animation has not. So quickly save all of these, then go back to the content drawer and click Import again. Double click on the animation that was without the character mesh. Next, go to this drop down and make sure that the skeleton is set to the one from Mixamo. Then you can just click Import All. As you can see, we now have an idle rifle animation which we can use for our character. So we can just save and close this. Go to the character blueprint and select the mesh. Then go to the skeletal mesh asset drop down and look for our Mixamo character. Next, change the animation mode to Use Animation Asset. Then set the animation to play to the one we just imported. Again, we're just using this animation to get things set up, and we'll move on to creating a full animation system in the next video. So subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when that video is released. Next, we're going to move on to spawning the weapon in the player's hands when they interact with one of the pickups. So go back to the event graph, delete these nodes, then drag off the spawn weapon event and search for a spawn actor from class. Connect the weapon pin to the class. Next, right click and search for Get Actor Transform. Connect this to the spawn transform pin. This will now spawn the gun that is set in the weapons variable in the pickup. Next, right click on this return value and promote it to a variable. Call this current weapon. This variable will store the weapon that the player is currently holding. Next, we need to attach the gun to the player's hand, so drag off this pin and search for Attach Actor to Component. Next, drag in the character mesh and attach it to the parent pin. Next, we need to create a socket on the character's hand bone that we can attach weapons to. To do this, we need to open the character's skeleton. To easily find this, click on the character mesh, then click on this Browse to Asset button next to the skeletal mesh asset. Open it, then click this button to open the skeleton. Go to Preview Animation, then select our idle rifle animation. Next, scroll down on the left until you find the right hand bone. Right click on it, then select Add Socket. Double click on it to rename it, then call it something like rifle_socket. Before you press enter, select the whole name, then copy it. This is because it needs to be written the exact same way in the character to work. So go back to the player character and paste it into the socket name. Next, we need to set all of these drop downs to snap to target. Now if we compile and save, then go back to the viewport and press play, then go over to one of the pickups and interact with it, you can see that the weapon is now attached to the player's hands. However, it has the complete wrong position and rotation. To set the gun correctly, we need to go back to the player's skeleton. Right click on our socket and go to Add Preview Asset. Then look for the mesh we use for our base weapon and add it. Now we can move and rotate the socket until the gun fits perfectly within the player's hands. We want the gun to be facing directly forward, so an easy way to do this is to change the view to top. Then change the scene from lit to wireframe. Then we can rotate it so the gun points directly forwards. This may take some tweaking, so keep moving and rotating it until it looks good. Once you're happy with it, press save, then go back to the viewport and press play. Here you can see that our weapon is held perfectly by the player. This weapon also looks good, but I can quickly show you how to change the position of a gun if it doesn't look right. So to do this, open the content browser and find the gun that you want to adjust. Open it, then just select the mesh and move it slightly to a position where you think the gun should be. This may take some trial and error going back and forth from the viewport, picking up the weapon in the level, and going back to the weapon blueprint to adjust its position. Next, I'm going to quickly turn off the debug for the sphere trace as we know our interaction system is working. So you can just go to the player character and on the multi-sphere trace node, set the draw debug type to none. Now the last thing we're going to go over in this video is a weapon drop system. This will make it so if the player picks up a new weapon, they will drop the one they're currently holding. As you can see, if you pick up a gun, then pick up another one, the player will be holding both at the same time. We don't need these anymore, so I'm going to quickly close them. Then we'll open our content browser and go to our weapons folder. Here we need to open the base weapon blueprint. Like we did with the pickups, we're going to create a variable which stores the corresponding weapon pickup, which we'll be able to use to spawn that pickup when the player picks up a different weapon. Click Add Variable, then call it Weapon Pickup. Set the type to the base weapon pickup blueprint. Then make sure it's a class reference. Next we want to set this variable in each of our weapons, so go to the content browser and open up the semi-auto weapon. Here you can set the variable to the semi-auto pickup. Compile and save, then go back to the content browser and open the full auto weapon. Then set the variable to the full auto pickup. Now we can close all these and go back to the player character where we'll set up this drop functionality. For now we're going to disconnect this spawn weapon event, then drag it below. Next, drag in the current weapon variable and get it. Drag off it and search for an isValid. This is basically used to check if the player is already holding a weapon. Connect it to the spawn weapon event. Next, drag off the current weapon again and search for the get weapon pickup. This is the variable we just made that stores the weapon pickup for each gun. Next, drag off this and add a spawn actor from class. Connect this to the isValid pin. Next, we want to spawn the pickup from the location of the weapon in the player's hands. This is so that it looks like it's being dropped by the player. So drag off the current weapon again and search for a get actor transform. Connect this to the spawn transform. Next we want to destroy the weapon that the player is holding to make room for the next one. So drag off the current weapon one last time and search for a destroy actor. Connect this after the spawn actor. Next you want to select all the code from above and connect it after the destroy actor. Next you want to reconnect the class pin on the spawn actor to the weapon pin on the event. Then finally connect the isNotValid pin to the spawn actor. This is so if the character is not already holding a gun, it will skip the drop mechanic and go straight to equipping it. If you compile and save, then go back to the viewport and press play, you will see that if you go to interact with a gun, then interact with another gun, our drop mechanic will now be working. However, there's still a couple final issues that we will need to fix. You'll probably notice that when the player drops a weapon, the collisions of the weapon and the character are interfering with each other, causing the player's movement to be blocked and the gun to move randomly round the level. There is also another issue that occurs when the pickup gets between the character and the camera, as it is interfering with the spring arm. To fix these, we'll start by going to the content browser and opening up the base weapon pickup. Select the gun mesh, then go to the details panel and scroll down to the collision section. Here you want to set the collision preset to custom. We can leave everything here as it is, but we just want to change the pawn collision to ignore rather than block. This should fix all the collision issues that we were having. Next, to fix the camera issue, go to the player character, then select the camera boom. In the details panel, you just want to deselect do collision test. Now if you compile and save, then go back to the viewport and press play, you should now have a working pickup and drop weapon system. Stay tuned for the next video where I'll be going over setting up character animations for this weapon system. If you found this video helpful, please feel free to like and subscribe or support me on Patreon so that I can keep making these Unreal Engine tutorials. Thank you so much for watching.